Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about facilities-related things in the Department of Residence Life that you might be encountering when working in one of our office spaces or in your role as a community advisor, resident advisor, or community steward. Now the things we're going to talk about include keys. Now as an RA, CA, or steward, you're a small piece of a larger process. I'm going to explain the entire process and then we'll talk a little bit about what your role is in the process. Okay, let's talk about the ReKey process. We're going to use the following diagram to talk about the process. First, we have a resident come into our office. They're sad because they lost their key. You'll want to contact the Residential Facilities Coordinator working or the RHD on call to talk to the student about whether or not the ReKey is an emergency situation because of a security risk, or if we have time to have our locksmith visit and take care of the problem. Once the staff member has decided that the room will be rekeyed, a work order is put in, and our locksmith, Larry, will begin the ReKey process. The RHD or the RFC submitting the order will fill out the ReKey form. The locksmith will then stop by the Residence Life office with one key packet containing all keys for the unit. The RFC or the RHD present will then divide up the keys for the residents. Now here's where you come in. When a resident's room has been rekeyed, there will be a tag on their door. They'll stop by the Residence Life office to get their new key. You'll grab the key binder, fill out the ReKey form, and give them their new key, with the end result of a happy resident. Now let's break this down a little bit. Now these forms are used for the ReKey of any space. So it could be when a space receives a temporary core or when a space receives a brand new core. The form should initially be filled out by a Residential Facilities Coordinator, an RFC, or a Residence Hall Director, an RHD. The RHD or RFC will fill out the type of ReKey occurring while labeling the room and the type of key being distributed. Every time there is a different type of key being distributed, a different form will be filled out. For example, if an Anderson resident is having their apartment rekeyed, they would have a separate form for their exterior keys and their interior keys. The RHD or the RFC filling out the form making the request will fill out the white area on the left-hand side of the ReKey sheet. They'll include the names of the residents who should be picking up keys, as well as the key codes that are associated with the resident. It's very important that we hand out the keys with the proper codes connected to the proper residents. We'll also label whether it's an exterior, interior, or temporary key at that time. Now here's where you come in. A student will come into the office and ask to pick up a new key because their door has had a lock change. Now you will go to the key binder, which is usually kept on top of the Residential Facilities Coordinator workstation. Inside the binder, you will go to the tab that's associated with the community that the student lives in. Every community has its own tab. Every community also has its own zipper bag, which would have the key that you're distributing in it. Now, you'll find the ReKey sheet that has been filled out for the keys that you're going to be distributing. You're going to be filling out the right-hand side of the sheet, the gray shaded area for the individual resident. Let's take a look at our example form. The top white barred area and the left-hand side should be filled out by the RFC or RHD. You can see that these residents, Tanya, Alicia, Kofi, and Joshua, have been filled out. Also filled out are the key codes and the type of key that each resident will be picking up, in this case, exterior keys. Now we're going to focus on the right side of the form, the shaded area, since that's the part of the form you'll be filling out as an office worker. When the resident comes to pick up their new key, ask to see their ID. Once you've found their name on the ReKey form, you will see if they're turning in an old key. As you'll see on the sample form, Joshua Peasley is not turning in a key. Kofi Obedu is turning in a key when he collects his new key. So the office worker will write down the key code and the type of key, and then ask the student to put the key in a key envelope and put it in the drop slot. Next, the office worker will collect a signature, a date, and a time from the student picking up the key. Finally, the staff person will print their name in case any follow-up is necessary. Now, there's a few things you should note when distributing keys. We always want to mark if a student is not turning in a key to us. That way, the cost of the ReKey can be divided equally amongst the residents who aren't turning in keys. When distributing keys, make sure that you open up the envelope and check to make sure the key code matches the code on the ReKey form. Take a look at the bottom of the form. You'll see there's a section for residents who may not receive keys. Now, a resident may not be receiving a key for a number of reasons, but we want to make sure that if a resident shows up to pick up a key and their name is listed there, that you give the RHD on call a phone call so that they can get in touch with their resident and remedy whatever the situation is. Once all of the keys have been distributed, the RFC will share the document with the RHD, who will then make sure all appropriate billing occurs. The final resting place of the ReKey form ends up with the room condition report packet. Now let's practice filling out the form. Pair up with another person. Have them pretend to be me, Tanya Hartwig. I'm going to be turning in key 98-3. On the key, the 3 appears before the 98, but the way we write it is 98-3. How would you fill out the form? Take some time to do this.